Mutants, crystals, scientists, ancient masks, and warp rooms. Add a dash of insanity and you get Crash Bandicoot. A game series that I feel I have rarely talked about, despite it being one of my favourite platforming series of all time next to Spyro and Sonic. Ever since playing the demo of Crash 2 from the official PlayStation magazine, I've been enamored with the series and have been there for every single release. But now that I own every Crash game, minus some obscure mobile releases as well as the LCD handhelds, I think it's time to take a quick look at every Crash game in the Crash Bandicoot series. Crash Bandicoot was first released for the PlayStation in 1996 and developed by Naughty Dog. While the game has aged in a lot of aspects, this is a huge step in terms of 3D gaming, essentially taking the likes of Sonic or Mario and giving it a Z-axis. This is why it was named Sonic's Arse game during development. What this game lacks in story, which basically boils down to go and save your girlfriend you mad bastard, makes up for it in terms of charm and spectacle. This was a revolutionary 3D platformer despite being released after the likes of Super Mario 64, which blew everyone away in what 3D platforming can do in this new generation of gaming. Gameplay wise, it wasn't really anything new, just a standard platformer but in 3D. But it's the little things that made it stand out from the usual Marios and Sonics. The Aku Aku masks that give you extra hits and invincibility, the creative bosses and how to fight them, and smashing boxes that contribute to a collectathon element, earning gems that lead to secrets. Not to mention, this game is quite difficult. There are several stages in this game that will make you break your controller, but it's not so arduous that you wouldn't finish the game in 1 or 2 sittings. Like I said, this game has aged, and part of that is the gameplay, which feels very stiff compared to later entries, and if you didn't own a memory card, you had to rely on writing down passwords. But without this game, we wouldn't have the series that we all come to love during the late 90s and early 2000s. Crash Bandicoot deserves a place in gaming history, even if the later games are better. Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back was released a year later. Taking place right after the end of the last game, we see Cortex fall and discover the crystals, whereupon he decides to use them to power his Cortex Vortex. Crash is abducted by Cortex and thrust into several parts of Insanity Island via warp rooms to gather the 25 crystals. During his quest, Coco, his newly introduced sister, and Embryo try to convince Crash to stop or collect gems instead, which leads to the secret ending. Gameplay remained mostly the same, but Crash could now crouch, slide, crawl, and body slam. Also in some levels, Crash can ride a jetbot across water, ride a polar bear, and use a jetpack in space. Compared to the first game, the gameplay felt more refined and overall just more responsive compared to the stiffness of Crash Bandicoot. Crash 2 is superior to its predecessor in every way and paved the way for all future Crash games. The warp rooms allowed us to finish levels in any way we choose, even though I played through them in order anyway, and it completely reworked the in-game save system, as you could only save in a memory card in the first game after completing a bonus stage. Here you can save at any time in the warp room. Like I said, this was a blueprint going forward for almost every Crash game, and remains my favourite Crash game even to this day. Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped was released again a year later. Like before, the game picks up immediately after the events of Crash 2's secret ending. The ruins of the Cortex Vortex space station crash lands on Earth and unleashes an evil entity known as Uka Uka, Aku Aku's brother. Along with Cortex and a time-obsessed not so nefarious Tropy, they plan to gather the 25 crystals from the original points in time. Everything that worked in Crash 2 is still here. Warp rooms, 5 levels with crystals and box gems, and a boss that unlocks the next room. Gameplay was exactly the same as the predecessor, though this time, Crash could gain new power-ups after defeating a boss such as a double jump or a fruit gun. He also ditched his jetboard for a motorcycle and a biplane played in certain levels, as well as being able to swim underwater. Also for the first time, Coco is now playable in certain levels such as riding a water bike or a tiger cub. The biggest addition were relics, and these can be collected by re-entering a level and completing a time trial. Completing the level and earning at least 5 relics unlocks access to the secret warp room, where extra levels and hidden paths to gems in earlier levels become available after every 5 relics, be it Sapphire, Gold, or Platinum. Crash Bandicoot Warped is the best of the trilogy as it perfected the Crash formula and added new gimmicks and creative bosses. Again, personally, I still prefer Crash 2 over 3. Not because Crash 2 was my first Crash game, but also the fact that the new vehicle-focused stages overshadow the excellent platforming. Crash 3 also started the friendly rivalry between developers Naughty Dog and Insomniac Games, as entering a code at the title screen will give you access to a demo of Spyro the Dragon. Likewise, Spyro had a demo to Crash 3. Crash Team Racing, more commonly known as CTR, was released in 1999 and is essentially a kart racer with a variety of modes to play through. The single-player adventure mode is where most of the game resides, and its story. Yes, this kart racer has a story. It involves an extraterrestrial named Nitrous Oxide, who claims to be the fastest racer in the galaxy. He challenges Earth to a game called the Survival of the Fastest, and if Earth's driver wins, he'll leave him alone. But if he wins, he'll turn the planet into a concrete parking lot and enslave all its inhabitants. Yeah, you can tell they did not care about the story in this game. During the adventure, you must race through all the tracks and arenas in the game. After beating the main trophy challenges, new modes become available such as Relic Races and the CTR Challenge, where winning all of them unlocks the Gem Cups. To win the game, you must get all trophies, all collectibles, beat all bosses before defeating Nitrous Oxide in a one-on-one race. While Crash Team Racing is heavily inspired by the likes of Mario Kart and Diddy Kong Racing, it is still an amazing game and an unexpected gem of a kart racer. Who knew that putting this marsupial in a go-kart will result in one of the most rewarding and chaotic racing games of all time? Unfortunately, this marked the end of Naughty Dog's era with Crash Bandicoot. Although Naughty Dog was no longer developing Crash games, the series still continued. Crash Bash was released in 2000 and developed by Eurocom, and is a party game of up to 4 players. The game's story, yes, this party game has a story, centered on a contest of minigames between Aku Aku and Uka Uga to decide which is better, good or evil. And way of doing so is to summon all their allies, including newcomer Rillaroo. In total, there are 28 minigames, but all are repeated variations of the same 7 minigames, 3 of which need to be unlocked during the game's adventure mode. Like its predecessors, the game adventure mode takes place in warp rooms. You need to win trophies, gems, crystals, and eventual relics by defeating the different challenges of each level. Certain levels require a number of these to gain entry and then the room's boss. In short bursts, this game can be fun with friends, but without unlocking the rest of the minigames, you are stuck with the first 4 minigames with 3 variations. It's a decent idea for a Crash Bandicoot themed party game, but there's no party here. Just a 10-minute bash with friends or 10 hours of head bashing against the wall. Crash Bandicoot: The Wrath of Cortex was developed by Traveler's Tales and released for the PS2 in 2001, and later in 2002 for the Xbox and GameCube, thus making the series from this point on multi-platform. The majority of the gameplay and design remains unchanged from Crash Bandicoot Warped. What has been changed is that Coco is now playable outside of vehicles, and Crash can now traverse some levels in an Atmosphere, an aliens-inspired power loader, and a helipack. The story centers on the appearance of a new superweapon created by Cortex, a genetically advanced bandicoot named Crunch, along with a group of destructive masks known as the Elementals, who were released by Uka Uka. What was improved was the presentation. Crash and the cast look exactly the same as their predecessors, just more rounded and sharper looking. The same goes with levels as well as the music. It is almost everything we've hoped for in the next-gen Crash game, but there are several problems holding it back from being better than the last game, or even Crash 2. For starters, there were overly long load times, save for the Xbox version, which took almost 30 seconds for every stage. It has an over-reliance on vehicles, where there's almost more vehicle-based levels than there are actual platforming ones, and overall being nothing more than Crash-free again. Which doesn't sound bad when I say it, but nothing about Wrath of Cortex pushed the series forward. I still enjoy Wrath of Cortex, it's fine for what it is, especially when you see the history of what they were trying to achieve, but it pales in comparison to what Naughty Dog achieved literally a few years ago. Crash Bandicoot: The Huge Adventure, or Crash XS in Europe, was released in 2002 for the Game Boy Advance by Vicarious Visions. The game's story centers on Cortex's plot to shrink the Earth through the use of a gigantic laser called the Planetary Minimizer. Crash, again, must gather crystals in order to power a device to return the planet to its proper size. The gameplay is based on the established formula in Crash 2 and 3, but unlike those, Crash XS is completely 2D, going as far as to use digitized sprites and sound effects from the classic games. There are only 4 warp rooms with 20 crystals to collect along with the usual gems and relics. I would go a bit further, but that's literally all there is. It's a surprisingly short, fun game to play, but it suffers from input delay which can be frustrating when doing time trials. Crash Bandicoot 2 Entranced was released a year later. This is the only game in the series to not feature Cortex, but instead has Entropy as the main villain, as well as a new villain named N.Sane. Entropy has kidnapped and brainwashed Coco and Crunch, but while trying to capture Crash, Aku Aku teleports Crash away, and thus Entropy has inadvertently created fake Crash. Gameplay of N.Sane is identical to XS with a few exceptions such as Riding a Magic Carpet, Wakeboarding, and Return of the Atlas Sphere. All the levels are displayed on a map screen rather than a warp room like previous games. Furthermore, the game introduces two new power-ups, Super Slide and Super Jump, which are unfortunately situational and now mapped to the same button as the Crash Dash, which, unless pressed correctly, will cause you to fail the time trials. Crash 2 N.Sane is a good sequel to XS as it's tried a non-linear level progression rather than the standard warp rooms. I'll even give praise to the Atlas Sphere for being better than Wrath of Cortex's. Coco's space stages, however, are the worst this game has to offer. Crash Nitro Kart was developed for the PS2, Xbox and GameCube in 2003. The story, because every arcade kart racer needs a story, centers on the abduction of Crash along with Cortex and others by the ruthless dictator Emperor Velo the 27th. He forces them to race in his gigantic coliseum for the entertainment of his subjects, threatening to destroy the Earth if they refuse. Like what Wrath of Cortex is to Crash 3, Nitro Kart is a near copy of Crash Team Racing with a new coat of paint. Adventure, Grand Prix, Time Trial, Quick Race, all included along with multiplayer. How it differs is that you can choose between two teams, Crash or Cortex in Adventure. Though unlike CTR, you can play as any character in selected teams, and during a race you can fill a frenzy meter to gain unlimited power-ups for a short while. Some focus was on the game's speed and rewarding players by executing power slides, and some tracks have anti-grav sequences predating Mario Kart 8. While the graphics were impressive, the game was buggy as hell, with constant falls for the course during a race, and the game penalizes you by dropping your speed instantly if you clip a corner or run over a slight bump. CNK does nothing more than try and fail to emulate Naughty Dog's loved classic. The Game Boy Advance version of Nitro Kart is a much better experience than its console counterpart. For a handheld version, it has stellar presentation, much like Mario Kart Super Circuit. Although it suffers from a stuttering frame rate and a learning curve when trying to pull off perfect power slides, I found this game a lot more fun and rewarding than the home console version. There was also an N-Gage version, but we don't talk about the N-Gage. Crash Fusion, also known as Crash Purple Ripto's Rampage, was released in 2004 along with its sibling game Spyro Orange: The Cortex Conspiracy. In Fusion's story, Cortex has joined forces with Ripto, and they formulate a plan to get rid of their enemies by sending monsters to the opposite's world. After a fight thinking the other was an enemy, Crash and Spyro realize they're being tricked, and thus start a new friendship and their quest to stop Ripto and Cortex by collecting gems and closing the portals to each world. Both games are side-scrollers, but the goal is completing a series of minigames such as shoot-em-ups and breakout clones. These minigames make up the core of the game, and beating them earns you trading cards that can be traded between cartridges via link cable if you feel like it. Crash Purple is better than Spyro Orange, though that's not saying much. While the platforming is standard and there's a variety of minigames, it feels like a cheap cash-in on fan expectations. Even to this day, we still do not have a proper crossover beyond cameos. Crash Twinsanity was released in 2004 for the PS2 and Xbox, developed by Traveller's Tales Oxford, not to be confused with the same Traveller's Tales who developed Wrath of Cortex. 3 years after the events of Wrath of Cortex, Crash and Cortex are forced to work together to stop the Evil Twins, a duo of mutant parrots, from destroying the Wumpa Islands. To do this, they must traverse across the islands collecting the crystals while defeating all of Crash's past villains. This game also introduced Cortex's niece, Nina Cortex. Twinsanity is quite different compared to previous games in the series. For starters, there's no warp rooms or level map, instead the game has a more open, free-roam feel with connected areas, although the linear path style of classics pops up from time to time. Twinsanity feels more like a platform and adventure than the basic level-to-level structure of the first 4 games. Teaming up with Cortex allows Crash to use him to his advantage, such as using him as a hammer, throwing him to activate switches, and using him as a snowboard. Also, for the first time in a non-spin-off title, you can play as Cortex armed with a ray gun, or his niece, Nina, who can climb walls with her robotic arms. Not all has changed though. Crates, crystals, and gems are still present, although crystals don't really have much importance outside of plot. Gems are no longer earned by breaking crates, instead they have to be found, which can range from incredibly easy to really challenging. Each gem will unlock artwork, moves, and extras in the gallery. One of the greater features of Twinsanity is the writing and its comedic tone.
How could things get any worse?
All character dialogue, especially Cortex's, is funny to listen to, and the game's fourth wall jokes made it feel like you were playing an interactive cartoon. Unfortunately, making the game free roam causes camera issues which will make their appearance known in critical areas. And this isn't mentioning getting easily killed by TNT and nitro crates even when you have an Aku Aku mask or invincibility. You know, the one thing meant to protect you from death. While I appreciate the attempt at changing the classic Crash formula and the writing which made me laugh, I really don't like this game. I seem to be in the minority on this, but I really don't like the awkward gameplay when playing as any character, especially when Crash and Cortex are rolling around fighting, even if it's funny. Or Nina's constant failure to climb, not to mention the Bible length of bugs that plague Twinsanity. Plus, if you play this on an Xbox 360, the frame rate suffers greatly during gameplay and cutscenes, to a point where the audio finishes before the cutscene ends. If you like this, then more power to you, but this is not a good Crash game to me. Crash Tag Team Racing. This time developed by Radical Entertainment, was released for the PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and PSP in 2005. The game's story starts out with Crash driving with Coco and Crunch, being chased by Cortex, Engine, and Nina. They end up crashing at a racing park owned by Ebenezer Von Clutch, who has chosen them to help find the park's power gems and his black power gem before he dies. As a reward, he offers the deed to the park to whoever returns the gems. The whole game takes place in a racing theme park called Motor World, and acts as a platforming hub. While exploring, you can collect Wumpa coins to buy outfits or crystals from park drones. But there's also racing, which you will be doing quite infrequently if I have to be honest. And this game's highlight is the ability to merge two cars together while racing, called clashing. As a result, one of the characters shoots other cars while the other drives. Other than racing, there are other events such as Fast Lap, Crashing It, a Run and Gun, and Rolling Thunder. When you get enough crystals, you can unlock the jump pad leading to the power gem and unlock the next area. Well, I like the idea of combining a platformer and a kart racer. The problem is that the platform takes precedent over racing to a point where you don't really need to race that much. Which is fine by me because this is probably the most bland kart racer I've ever played once you find the best character to race as and shoot with. A few changes were made to the cast and characters in this game, which would continue in later games. Crash now has the ability to communicate in garbled speech, Crunch now parodies Mr. T, and Engine was recolored and talks like Igor. Tag Team Racing is not CTR3 or CNK2. It's a very basic kart racer and platformer combo that doesn't do anything special beyond its clash mechanic that can be easily exploited. Though I enjoyed it for the most part, it is one of the most forgettable titles in the series. Crash Boom Bang. This was Crash's first and only game to be developed by a Japanese developer, Dimps, and was released in 2006 for the Nintendo DS. The game's story centers on a multimillionaire who uses Crash and the characters to unearth the powerful object dubbed the Super Big Power Crystal. Yeah, seriously. He sends an invitation to Coco Bandicoot inviting her and Crash to the World Cannonball Race, where the winner will earn $100 million. Crash Boom Bang is primarily a party game that takes place on several boards. Like with Mario Party 9 and 10, all the players roll a dice and move at the same time, but in different directions. Depending on the type of square that you land on, Wumpa Fruit can be won or lost, an item can be obtained, a special event can be triggered, or a minigame might start. The game features 40 minigames that can be played alone or against friends. But you won't. Crash Boom Bang is a joke. It is the worst Crash game, if not one of the worst games of all time. It says a lot when Sonic Shuffle and the worst of the Mario Party titles are better options. Bland gameplay, obnoxious stylus recognition, and I swear the minigames are rigged against you. Unless you like bad games or are an avid collector, avoid Crash Boom Bang. It's not worth the misery. Crash of the Titans, developed by Radical Entertainment for the PS2, Wii, 360, and PSP in 2007. This game is significant for not only redesigning the whole cast of characters, but drastically changing how Crash is played. While it is still a standard progression of A to B levels, everything in between has been altered and generally not for the better. Titans is a 3D beat-em-up with very minor RPG elements. Barely anything of the original Crash Bandicoot game design was kept. The major selling point of the game was the ability to jack Titans, allowing Crash to control them and use their powers against other Titans and hordes of minions. As you progress, you collect Mojo, the game's form of experience, and after a specific untold threshold, you gain upgrades to combat, strength, and spinning. Yes, spinning is an unlockable that can make Crash dizzy. While it sounds interesting, it gets very, very repetitive as the game goes on. The story follows Crash saving his sister Coco after Cortex and Nina capture her to force her to work on the Dominator. There's a few twists throughout the game's episodes as we meet most of the newly designed cast, as well as some funny moments, but the story is basic and not the slightly bit engaging. Crash After Titans is an odd duck. Well, not technically a reboot, you can tell that's what the goal was in terms of gameplay and design. I will say though, I actually liked playing this, especially with a friend for co-op, which you will need for the latter half of the game. Crash of the Titans was also released on the Game Boy Advance the same year, developed by Amaze. It's mostly the same game but a side-scroller with extra characters that didn't appear in the console version. While the platforming is decent, the combat suffers from collision detection and frequent stun locking that can be beneficial if you're lucky. And yes, there was a Crash of the Titans on Nintendo DS, also developed by Amaze. What makes this part interesting is that the game is more of a traditional Crash game, and it's pretty good. While the game still has the same jacking gimmick and upgrades to buy from Coco, this is a more faithful version of Titans that carries over several design aspects of the classic games such as box breaking and crystal collecting. Unfortunately, the same console-to-console version apply as the combat gets repetitive and most levels seem to go on for minutes at a time. Still, I'm genuinely surprised at how good of a game this handheld port is. Crash Mind Over Mutant was released the following year for the same systems, serving as a follow-up to Titans. While most of the gameplay remains the same, Mutant added the ability to store mutants for later use as well as making the entire game open-ended similar to Jak and Daxter. The story follows Cortex as he recruits his former partner Embryo to create a mind control device called the NV that transmits bad mojo siphoned from a betrayed Uka Uka. The NVs affect both Koku and Crunch, which makes this the second time they've been brainwashed, and thus Crash must rescue them and stop Cortex. What makes this story unique is that it's told using a variety of animation styles from old time style to South Park and even Dragon Ball. It's genuinely funny to watch and a good way to keep you invested to see what else can be parodied. While the story is a must to experience, I just don't like playing Mind Over Mutant. Mutant is praised as the better of the two reboot titles, but I had trouble finishing this one. The open-ended design gets really tedious as you travel back and forth between areas, and what rubs salt into the wound is that near the end of the game, Uka Uka offers you warp points. Why wasn't this available much earlier? Mind Over Mutant was also released for Nintendo DS developed by Toze. Unlike Titans, Mutant on DS is a side-scrolling beat-em-up. This game is bad. It has the same problems Crash of the Titans on GBA has, if not worse, as I kept getting stun locked frequently. Because of that, I never got to explore more of the game due to the bad collision detection and weak combat. Crash Bandicoot N.Sane Trilogy was released in 2017 for the PS4 and later for the Xbox and Switch. This collection of remastered games was brought to us by Vicarious Visions, who already had some history with the series. The N.Sane Trilogy is a complete remastering of Crash Bandicoot 1, 2, and 3. All three titles were given an overhaul in terms of graphics and retooled gameplay for modern consoles. Furthermore, the voice cast was replaced with a modern cast with reanimated cutscenes. So if you prefer Clancy Brown as Cortex instead of Lex Lang, I'm sorry. The gameplay is one-to-one with some minor improvements and some regressions. While being able to fully move with the analog stick in Crash 1 is useful, the jet ski in Crash 3 is worse than the original. Plus the hitbox surrounding Crash has been rounded off, making simple jumps more frustrating than before. It's not all bad as Crash 1 allows you to save on a map screen and both Crash 1 and 2 now have time trials. What makes this collection even better is the free DLC. The cut level Stormy Ascent is now fully playable in all its hardcore glory for Crash 1, and a completely new level, Future Tense, is also fruit gone to the gonads difficult for Crash Warped. Overall, the N.Sane Trilogy is a great nostalgic throwback with the ability to play as Coco throughout the trilogy, minus some vehicle stages. This trilogy makes up for the 7 years fans had to wait. Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled is a remaster/remake of CTR developed by Beanox in 2019. Everything from the original Crash Team Racing is present. With a graphical overhaul, this game also hosts additional content from Nitro Kart and Crash Tag Team Racing. Alongside adjustments to the original gameplay, there's also customization to variations of the Adventure Mode, Classic and Nitro Fueled, as well as a shop to purchase new skins for the wealth of unlockable characters. With all DLC released, CTR Nitro Fueled stars every character across the series, including one-time characters such as Rillaru, Yaya Panda, and Megamix, as well as new characters. Babies. Although Nitro Fueled was a faithful remaster packed with more content than we could ever imagine, it wasn't without controversy as Activision added microtransactions post-launch. Purchase more Wumpa coins with real money. The game pays out small amounts of coins after each race, and each unlock in the shop is worth a few thousand. It's a scummy practice, and it would have been better to increase the price payout or lower the cost in the pit shop. Can we get an update to that, please? Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time was released in 2020 and developed by Toys for Bob. This is the true fourth entry and a follow-up to Crash 3 Warp's true ending, where Cortex and Entropy get sent back in time. This has sparked the theory that Rapper Cortex and subsequent games were the alternate timeline where Crash did not gather any of the gems or relics. The story picks up 20 years later, where Cortex and Entropy escape from their prison after Ooga Ooga tears up the fabric of reality and sets about destroying Crash for good. Crash and Coco make their way across time and space, collecting a new set of masks to fix it. During their adventure, they team up with Cortex, Dingodile, and an alternate version of Tana to stop Entropy, who betrayed Cortex and teamed up with his female counterpart. The story is really good and the best part of the game, as it encompasses many aspects of Crash's history, right down to cameos of past villains. Graphically, this is also the best looking Crash game, with bouncy animations and a great draw distance, showing off the many detailed levels in each dimension. I cannot stress how good this game looks and how fitting the new style works. Gameplay is like the classics, but more free-flowing, as basic jump arcs carry you further than before, and the slide can give you more air, and being able to jump after a slide leads to a whole slew of platforming challenges. You can play as both Crash or Coco throughout the entire game, while utilizing the 4 masks to shift reality, super spin, slow down time, or change gravity. Unlike the power-ups of Crash 3 or vehicles of Wrath of Cortex, these masks act as both during sections of the levels. Additionally, Cortex, Dingodile, and Tana are playable in their own stages. Cortex can fire a blaster to change enemies to bouncy pads or solid platforms, while also having able to dash through the air. Dingodile has a blower/vacuum used for box breaking and launching TNT, and can also be used as a brief hover. And Tana can wall jump and use a grapple to get to distant areas, as well as out of reach boxes. Speaking of boxes, Crash 4 is one of the hardest games in the series and a nightmare to complete. There are no crystals, but there are 6 gems to find and earn in each level. 3 for collecting the Wumpa Fruit, making them a tertiary collectible. 1 for breaking all the boxes, some of which are so well hidden you'll be scratching your head for days as to why you missed 1 or 2 of them. 1 for finding the hidden gem, which can be extremely well hidden itself. And the last gem for finishing the stage in 3 deaths or less. This wouldn't be too much of a chore to do, but every level has an inverted mode that mirrors the level, as well as adding a filter that affects gameplay. With 6 more gems to collect. Collecting each set of gems unlocks skins for Crash and Coco. On top of that, there's the character sub-stages where you get to play as one of the extra characters prior to an event that happened in the main level, but then forces you to continue said level as Crash or Coco, making you play the portion of the level 4 times, as these sub-stages have their own basic and inverted gems. Then there's the flashback tapes that are collectible challenges with their own set of relics that get really difficult with platforming so precise you need to study quantum physics. And yes, there are relics to collect, as well as a new collectible, Perfect Relics, which require you to get through each stage, breaking all boxes, collecting most of the Wumpa Fruit without dying once. Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time is a hardcore game for completionists, while also being a great new game for newcomers to the series that played the N.Sane trilogy. But to attempt to complete it, it requires the world from you. While I don't like Crash 4 as much as the original trilogy, it's insane that we even got a sequel to Crash 3 after so many years. Crash on the Run is a mobile game developed by King in 2021 and was shut down in 2023. On the Run was an endless runner of sorts where you control Crash or Coco, roam various locations in order to collect ingredients to construct weapons to defeat villains such as Nitrous Brio, Tiny Tiger, Iron Crates, and Mr. Crumb. You know, that one character, never mind. Gameplay is similar to other endless runners such as Sonic Dash. You automatically run forward and can jump, slide, body slam, and switch between 3 lanes while avoiding obstacles, collecting Wumpa Fruit, and smashing crates for ingredients by tapping the screen to spin. Once you have enough, you can craft weapons that grant you access to battle past villains and collect power gems. The more power gems, the more levels and locations you can run through for more ingredients to craft more weapons to battle villains and gain more gems. Yes, it's an endless cycle. But like with many mobile games, there are timers that you need to wait for in order to get said weapon. Cooldown timers when you can go gathering for more ingredients, and limited space to craft weapons. This can be circumvented by using a premium currency, crystals, that can be earned or paid for with real money. Crystals can also be used to unlock new skins for Crash or Coco, with some having buffs that can increase the amount of ingredients collected or give you more Aku Aku masks. There's also a multiplayer mode, but it's basically a survival run as you try to outrun 2 other players' times. Doing so gives you trophies that, when tallied in whatever team you're in, and winning team tournaments, net you more crystals. Crash on the Run works decently well with the Crash formula, and getting new skins that reference Crash's history is fun. But beyond that, the game is not that deep or particularly challenging. Like with most mobile games, it requires a major investment of time or money if you are willing to spend it. But like I said, King shut it down in February 2023. Finally, there's Crash Team Rumble, a 4v4 multiplayer game also developed by Toys for Bob in 2023. The goal of the game is to score more Wumpa Fruit than the opposing team while also activating key points on the various maps you play on. Being solely a multiplayer game, there are seasons where new content is slowly added in, such as skins, characters, and maps, in order to keep players invested over the coming months. Before even playing, I can see that this game looks colourful as it carries over the styles of Crash Bandicoot 4, but gameplay-wise, it looks dull. I'm sure it might be fun to play as Crash and friends in a frenzied match against others, but buying a game for full price with barely any content and spending more money for a season passes that may or may not invigorate interest leaves me little hope. So I played CTR, no the other one. It's okay. The matches are hectic and the gameplay is the same as Crash 4, though as Crash, the right trigger slides and circle slams, which threw me off for a while. There are gem pads that can give your team a score booster, but they could be taken by the other team players, so it's a battle for the bonus, and that leaves me with the biggest gripe when it comes to playing online with others. You have a health meter and can be knocked out, losing all your collected Wumpa and relics, which are needed to access stage hazards, and there will be arseholes wanting to knock you out at the gem pads and score goals, or they will just land a power-up on top of it. Worse is that aside from the monthly events that change up the scoring and such, that's basically it. It feels like a multiplayer mode that would have worked great if it was attached to a main single-player game, like it was going to be for Crash 4. But no, it's Titanfall and Battlefront again, which is a shame really because 9 months after release, the game no longer is being supported. If it had a basic single-player with a shoestring story where you battle against bots, slowly increasing in difficulty, then I would be fairer to it. As it stands, it is a game that you can no longer play and it sits on your shelf gathering dust. And that's every Crash Bandicoot game. There are a few I missed out on, such as the mobile kart races that have been delisted, as well as the very rare LCD game dubbed Crash Bandicoot 99X. I also considered Crash and Cortex inclusion in Skylanders Imaginators, but I placed it on the same pedestal as Sonic for LEGO Dimensions. Its X character in Y game. Overall, this was a fun run through of Crash's gaming history. A lot of ups, some downs, few controversial, but which game was your favourite? Let me know in the comments below.